going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. You know who it is by now,
Jimothy.
So ladies and gents, it feels like an age since I have spoken to you guys. I've been super duper busy. We are on the run up until Christmas, but that doesn't mean the videos are going to stop. It just means they're a little bit slower to come out than usual. However, we are back testing Fire Brigade. That's it, Fire King's Tri Brigade, which seems to be a little bit of an interesting take on the more budget variant of the deck. Now, I'm not going to lie, ladies and gents, after playing a few duels and after coming up against a few opponents that are playing the quote-unquote more expensive build, it's very clear, like night and day clear, the difference between the two strategies. It's just like, it's ridiculous. Like the amount of stuff that Snake Eye Fire Kings can do on your turn, let alone on their own turn, is just absolutely insane. Like, I'm talking about 7-8 interactions, like easily, and which you'll see in a few of the replays, ladies and gents. Now, with regards to Fire Kings, this is a deck that I've been very interested in. I've had the core for some time now. And I was actually looking to just mess about with it before it actually became a structure deck, which was quite interesting. I was just going to take it to locals for a little bit of a meme and just see how I did with it, because it's a bit of an old strategy that's been around for a while, but a lot of the new cards do not play like the old strategy, which is crazy. It is getting future support, which is a little bit interesting. I think it's getting like a level 4 monster, which allows it to just like facilitate some crazy plays as it is. But all in all, ladies and gents, this deck is very recursive, and there's a few plus points, but then also a few weaknesses. Obviously, the whole gimmick of the deck is destruction based by destroying your own cards, a little bit like Unchained, to be honest. But they do have their own in archetype monster negate, as well as spell and trap negate, which reminds me a lot of like Sprite. Just having those negations in-house, I think, is just crazy. Like, it's mad powerful for the deck. And on top of that, you do not really need your extra deck, but you don't get locked out of anything per se, especially without some of the new cards that are going to be released later on in the year, or even next year, so to speak. You don't get locked out of anything, which is really interesting. So Super Poly is just open to you. If you wanted to build a more spammy link-based strategy, you can. Obviously, it's open to like Tri Brigade stuff, because most of, well, all the monsters are Beast Warrior, Wing Beast monster type. So Tri Brigade is just a natural fit for the deck. You've also got a lot of level 1 fire, so the Dear Battlestar engine is viable. Yeah, it's super strong, and it's very flexible in where it can go. You can play a compact engine, you can play more of a substantial engine where the main focus is the Fire King stuff, which is probably what I'm going to lean towards after testing the Tri Brigade stuff, to be honest, because I don't know, I think the Tri Brigade stuff is really good, but the ceiling on it is not as high as I'd hoped. And it's crazy to think that Tri Brigade used to be meta a couple of years ago. Now it just seems like it just doesn't do anything whatsoever, just because of the pace of the game is just so fast. So yeah, it's more of an interesting take rather than something that you would significantly consider, to be honest. But all in all, I think it's spicy. Like, the deck does do a few bits and pieces. Like, it can put up some interruptions, it can play for a number of negates. It does die to a few effects. Dweller obviously is, well, say Dweller, anything that moves the cards out of the graveyard basically is a problem. It dies to most of the hand traps. It can establish a negate under 5 summons pretty easily, especially with some of the Fire King stuff, but it just doesn't set up an intimidating board. I know the board's a little bit deceptive because you can actually play on your opponent's turn, especially with some of the new Fire King stuff, but I don't know, I feel like it needs more testing, and that's just me, to be honest. Like, this deck could go in like any direction it wants to, just because of the nature of the deck and just the things that it can facilitate. And I feel like with future fire support, it's definitely going to get stronger. Now, a lot like Fallen of Albaz, because the deck's so accessible, expect to see this at your locals, ladies and gents, and you need to be prepared for it. I did mention Dweller previously, but Dweller does actually shut down the Fire Brigade, the Fire King portion of the deck. A lot of their effects can resolve in the graveyard. For example, Barong, the new High King, Garunix, Kirin, yeah, just a whole host. I might butcher that name, but there's a whole host of effects that resolve in the graveyard. So Dweller is definitely something that's going to kill the deck. He does not need his extra deck, so it can go ahead and play, I don't know, like Nadir Servant, for example, if it's going to go for the Dogmatic area because there's so much space. It can also play Ultimate Slayer, for example. I think when the deck actually does get established with, I think it's Bonfire that's going to be added, as well as the Snake Eye Populace. Once those cards come out, ladies and gents, I do believe that its extra deck is going to be more utilized, because it goes through like IP Masquerena, it sets up like Link Karibo, it can do a Decode Talk, a Heat Soul Draw. Like, the deck does so much, as well as the, I can't remember her name, is it the Eternal Princess? I can't remember her name. You'll see her in one of the replays, but she can pop a card from the graveyard basically. She's just like DPE from the graveyard, keeps recurring itself, keeps popping cards, and then it can revive one on your own turn as like a trigger effect, which is just crazy. So a very, very powerful subset of the deck. Like, there's just so much it can do. So expect to see, make sure you're prepared for it. Like I said, if you've got anything that can mitigate the targeting or mitigate the destruction, it would definitely help. And I am actually leaning towards kind of like playing a few more of the Fire King cards, just because they give a bit more utility. I was playing a little bit of a minimal package, which I'll go over in the deck list in a moment, but like, yeah, the deck does just a lot, ladies and gents, and it's actually kind of like had a bit of a showing already in YCS Bologna. It tended to show up. YCS Bologna was a bit wild for a number of reasons, and I might make a separate video on Bologna, just kind of like reviewing and just kind of like talking about how the whole event just like transpired. But Fire Kings were there and they was actually performing, and obviously it's not at full power yet, so expect this deck to just be another like very, very dissimilar to the Fallen of Albash structure deck, where a lot of people picking it up. It's going to be budget, they're going to play the budget variant, and then those who are very, very serious about the deck are definitely going to jump more into it. Just before we get into the list, ladies and gents, look at what this deck can do with the new stuff that's coming out. I'm talking about the Snake Eye stuff, as well as the Dear Bastard engine. Like, my opponent's ending on so much right here. He's got the Flamber's Dragon, brings back the IP Masquerena. He's got Princess, whatever her name is, in the graveyard, ready to pop something. He can make an SP Little Knight whenever he's ready. It's just absolutely insane. And on top of that, he had Super Poly set, Circle of the Fire Kings was set. He managed to get a negate out the graveyard. It's crazy what this deck can do, ladies and gents. So this is the potential, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Right now, people are kind of sleeping on it. It is what it is. But in the future, ladies and gents, especially with the amount of fire support that's coming out, this deck is just, yeah, it's doing stuff. Now, with regards to the deck lists, ladies and gents, very, very interesting list. I am actually playing 2 Sacred King of the Fire King Garunix. Now, typically, most builds that I'm seeing at the moment are only actually playing 1. And you can actually go ahead and play 1, because once you got it in rotation in the graveyard, it just jumps out of the graveyard each turn. But I do actually find value in having the 2. Sometimes it's nice to have in hand. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to extend for a few plays. So definitely enjoying the 2 of, but again, you could drop that down. I'm also playing 3 Fire King High Avatar Kirin. This card's crazy. It's basically like Shavara if you've ever played Unchained. It can just quick effect destroy a monster on field, or a fire monster on field or in your hand, and it kind of like jumps onto the field, which is crazy. And then when it's destroyed, it can revive a Fire King monster from graveyard and then pop a card on the field just for free, which is, this deck obliterates back row. It's crazy. And Unchained is actually one of its better matchups, especially when like Lovely Labyrinth decides to just go ahead and pop one in hand, and then you get destruction effects off one of your Fire King monsters. It's crazy. I played double Fractal. I've reduced. I don't know. I'm a little bit at odds with regards to the ratios of the Tri-Brigade monsters. Realistically, I only really want to use them to just fill the graveyard with like stuff so I can banish for their various effects. I am playing 2 Kit. Sorry, not what's his name again? Keras. Mainly because he's your main extender. Now, if you do get stopped with your Fire King plays, because sometimes you do die on your normal summon at the moment, especially with this variant, you can then go ahead and go with your Brigade plays and then find yourself into a Keras. And more times than not, you can facilitate having a discard fodder in hand. Fire King Ponix, crazy card. I actually played 2 of the Fire King Sacred Immolation, which is the spell. Well, it's the quick play spell trap destruction, or just card destruction. So you could target any number of cards on field as well as an equal number of Fire King monsters and just blow them up basically. And we all know that our Fire King monsters just trigger off their effects. So yeah, it's a crazy card and definitely a 2-of, mainly because you don't want to max out on some of the newer cards. I think it's Sanctuary of the Fire Kings as well as the Fire King Island, because they're so searchable, especially through your Ponix. You don't really want to see them in your hand. You want to kind of like search for them and see other things in your hand. So having another search target for Ponix definitely pays dividends, and especially with the nature of the game at the moment, there's always a little bit of back row because a lot of decks are kind of playing mid-rangey, where they've got a few monsters on field and a couple of set back row. So it's definitely a good idea to just like go ahead and have another search target for that. Imperm, as well as the Brigade Revolt. I've actually thought about putting this to 2 just because it's so useful. I am playing 3 Shirag, especially if you decide that you want to kind of like go for just like a heavy combo and get greedy. You can actually use Shirag's effect on your turn 0, or sorry, your turn 1 to get a search basically. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least. I'm actually only playing 2 Tenki. I could potentially play another one, but yeah, I wanted to keep it at 40, and like I said, this is a bit of an experimental build. It's not finalized by any way, shape, or the imagination, but it's just something that I've decided to like throw together. In terms of the extra deck, 1 Zeus, 1 Typhon. I think these 2 just go without saying. Typhon's crazy. Like, I love Typhon. I think it's crazy. It's just, it is a last resort play. If your opponent sees you doing this, they know that you're out of options and out of resources. But nevertheless, it can sometimes swing the game in your favor, especially if you get rid of a key extra deck piece. Dingirsu for the non-targeting send. Sometimes you just can't get over a monster. 2 of the Garunix Eternity, Hyang of the Fire Kings, crazy card. Like, this XYZ monster is just dumb. Like, if it gets popped with materials, it can revive Fire King monsters equal to the number of materials that it had. So yeah, and it can just destroy our cards on field, just like board nukes for days. Triple Shirag, like I mentioned previously, just goes without saying. You get a search off him. I'm actually playing an Appaloosa. Like I said, if you've seen some of the replays that are in the background, ladies and gents, you'll see Appaloosa just going absolutely in, just like for free. And there's a few games that I didn't record where she literally just won me a game just because my opponent tried to like bait her a couple of times and then go into battle phase, and then they ran into a Brigade Revolt, which was quite funny. But yeah, it's crazy. And 1 Desperate Doom Eagle. Don't actually make this too often, but it does help. I am actually missing an access code talker, which I probably would drop a Shirag for, just because it's, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. 1 Brigade Bearbrun, the Rampant Rampager. Just searches your Revolt, as well as your Ferrigit. Now, this is where there's a little bit of contention. I've got a Ancient Warriors as well as a Scarecrow Lightheart. Now, this could be actually an access code talker slot. So I'm actually still kind of like playing around with it. But definitely let me know in the comment section, ladies and gents, what you would put in this slot. And that's the deck list at the moment. Like I said, this is a very, very much experimental build. I haven't actually taken this to locals as yet. And I don't think I'm going to take this variant to locals. I'm going to take more of a purer variant and just go with like hand traps and just see where it takes me, basically. Just because I like to kind of like see what decks are capable of, and I know in my heart of hearts that I'm gonna have to get the Diablo Star stuff. I've been putting it off just because it's expensive. It's Christmas is around the corner. I don't want to shell out money on cards when I got Christmas presents to buy. But in saying that, it takes this deck to a whole nother level. It's actually insane what this deck can do with the Diablo Star stuff, as well as the Snake Eye stuff, which I do have, by the way, apart from Populous, obviously. So very, very interesting. But let me know what you think of the deck, ladies and gents. Is it something that you're going to be enjoying jumping into? If so, let me know in that comment section below. And we find ourselves at the end of another video. If you did like this content, you know what to do by now. Hit that like button, share, subscribe, all of that beautiful good stuff. And I will definitely see you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.